We're doing Finding, Growing, and Cultivating an Audience Online. I'm your moderator. My name is Jenny Powell. I am the Content and Speaker Coordinator for VidCon, which is the world's largest online video conference, which will be taking place this June, the 28th to 30th, in Anaheim, if any of you are interested. Before I get started, I'm just going to go ahead and let my panelists all introduce themselves, starting with Jim Louderback.
Hi, I'm Jim Louderback, CEO of Revision 3. We're an internet television network. We produce about 30 shows, distribute them online, everything from YouTube to Roku to Boxy to every glowing rectangle we try.
I'm Susan Miller, and I'm executive producer and writer of a scripted drama web series called Anyone But Me. We just finished our third season and our series finale. We won the first Writers Guild of America award ever given for original new media, which is pretty cool. And as is kind of rare for scripted drama web series, we had about 13 million views worldwide over our time so far. And I also created and wrote a branded web series called Bestsellers.
I'm Tim Street. I'm Vice President of Mobile Video for M Dialogue. We are a stream management platform. We enable folks to deliver seamless ad insertion across connected devices using your current ad ops workflow. I'm also on the International Academy of Web Television Board of Directors, and I'm involved in a few web series as well.
Hi, I'm, is it on? Yeah, you can hear me? So my name's Carol Walker, and I am Vice President of Trade Marketing at Demand Media. Demand Media is a technology and media and publishing company. We just went public about a year ago, and we have some of the websites that you may have heard of: eHow, Livestrong, Crack. And essentially what we've done is we've turned the publishing model on its head, and instead of creating content that we think consumers will enjoy, we actually comb the internet, comb social, comb search, and through our internal data, looking at all of those different metrics, we develop content that we know folks are looking for because they're asking for it directly. Prior to that, I was with Mars. I've spent most of my life in the CPG area, so I spent about 6 years at Mars where I headed up integrated communications, and then prior to that I was with Kraft Foods where I created the online advertising practice there, and prior to that was at Nabisco. So I'm really a CPG queen, and just recently went over to the dark side of media, if you will.
Hi there, I'm Sibley Law, creator of about a dozen web series. Most recently, we've been testing an animation tool we'll be releasing later this year. You can see the tests in a web series called Puppet John Law. We are about to release a comedy network called Ziz. You can find it at youtube.com/Ziz. Being anchored by the LA Comedy Shorts Festival. And I have a book that's currently available called Streaming Media Delivery in Higher Education.
Great. So this panel obviously focuses on audience integration, audience building. A lot of people, when they first start looking into online media, they wonder, well, once I get started, how do I get the audience to engage with my content and continue to come back to it over and over again? So everyone on this panel has different levels of experience with those topics, so we'll probably learn a lot from this group. We're going to kind of hit this from a couple different points. We're going to start with talking about personality-driven content, which is more of the first-person, what you might call vlogger style programming that really kind of launched YouTube into a more of an entertainment-based program as opposed to just being for user-generated content. Then we'll move into scripted content and have a discussion about the YouTube Premium Channel initiative, in which YouTube is investing over $100 million in original scripted content, focusing more on longer form and more premium content. We'll then talk about brands and advertising and the ways in which are the correct ways to integrate a brand into your programming so as not to alienate an audience, which is of real concern to some creators. And then we'll end it out with a little bit of a discussion on studios and whether creators should look to join a studio or continue to stay independent, and what the kind of pros and cons are that from an audience building standpoint. And then I'll make sure to leave at least 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A at the end, because you probably all have things you're looking to ask this group. Okay, so starting out with personality-driven content. We really saw an emergence of this back in the days of like Lonely Girl 15 being the most huge example, even though that technically was scripted content, but it was very much engaging with the first-person style of integration. What do you guys feel made that type of content so engaging to an audience that it kind of built this entire new type of entertainment out of it?
So, I think, Jenny, first you have to tell people that you were a Lonely Girl junkie. So, you just got to lay it all out on the table here. So if anybody knows why it was so interesting and engaging, it's you. But one thing what I will say, just to sort of kick it off, is it seemed like, and it was a real person. Mm-hmm. Being real. Being like, it was like your friend on the other end of that screen that was talking right to you.
Yeah.
I think whenever you look at content that has an audience, there's either information that's there that's really important, or there's something emotionally engaging. And when you look at the emotions that Lonely Girl 15 moved, she was this sexy girl with big eyebrows, and she had a story to tell. And it was scary. She had parents that were into this cult, and it was just a weird, creepy thing going on. So depending on who you were and whether or not you thought it was real, whether or not you knew it wasn't real and just were going along for the ride, there were different human emotions that were being moved to the point where you wanted to share it with someone else. And that's really important to think about when you're creating content, is what are the emotions that you're going to move with that content, and can you move them well enough so that it is shared?
I wasn't going to really comment on Lonely Girl, but I think what Jim said is true, and that is she seemed real. And one of the things that we've discovered through working either with professionals, those professionals that you might see on television versus those quote-unquote stars that you'll find on the internet, we're actually finding greater success by working with online celebrities that come already with their own following. And so therefore, again, they seem a lot more real than using some of the celebrities that are already, on the front pages of People magazine, et cetera. So I think there is something to that real, relatable, authentic type of, let's say, personality versus having, just another, glossy star.
I don't know if it's appropriate at the moment to segue, but to actually use this. Anyone But Me is a scripted drama, as I said, about young people, gay, straight, and multi-ethnic, searching for identity and relationships. And my background in traditional media, film and television, and as a playwright, I'm moved towards telling stories through characters. But in a sense, Lonely Girl 15 and some other shows that used either the video diary format, while my creative partner, Tina Cisa Ward, and I wanted to go away from that, nevertheless, the qualities that we were looking for were relating to people, engaging people with characters that you could. First of all, you didn't know the actors. We had all newcomers. And so the sense of discovery, of these people and making them one's own for the audience, I think, was a very big factor in the success and of people wanting to tune back in. But also the quality of telling stories to audiences that were maybe underserved, as it turned out, young people particularly. And so in a sense, you could say that we partly derived from that, even though our model of drama has been around in theater and film and television for ages, yet the fact that this is on the internet, the fact that this gives us a different kind of canvas and new territory, I think changes the landscape of how we do it.
So what I'm hearing is it's very much a possibility to take these personality-driven techniques that work and put them into a scripted environment, which is a really nice segue into talking more about this new initiative to try to push things into more of a longer form, scripted, premium level. And do we think that those techniques are going to work in these new programs? And how do we get the audiences to make that transition?
Jenny, I want to I've got a comment that I think bridges the gap between both of those.
Right.
And it dovetails with something you're working on now, the Lizzie Bennett Diaries. And it's a scripted narrative that's presented in a vlog format. And it's absolutely delightful. The female lead talks straight to the camera. And the thing that resonates just like with Lonely Girl 15 is she's really genuine. There's a genuineness. But then playing to the longer form aspect, with YouTube now we have playlists and things like that. So you can click over to the playlist, click play, sit back and watch. Is it 12 episodes now? 10
We're
episodes?
up to 12, yeah.
And watch them straight through.
And what's really interesting about that, not to just talk about my own show, but
I can talk about it if you want.
if you have more to add.
I mean, the thing is with Lizzie Bennett Diaries, what they've done is they've brought in, they based everything on Pride and Prejudice. So there's a built-in audience of people that love that story, and it's being retold in a modern-day way. And so Bernie Sue, who's the creator behind Lizzie Bennett, is taking all the stuff that he learned from doing another series, Compulsions, which was an award-winning series, and he also has brought in a lot of the things that we've learned from this video blogging world and really wrap them together to build an audience and to engage this audience. And then he has it so that you can play catch-up as well. And really, if you're just tuning in, you can go to the website and not only see the video content that's been created there, but you can see what tweets have been done, what Facebook stuff, and I don't know what else, what other platforms. Tumblr.
I mean, I think that aspect is what helps to build an audience. I mean, on our show, you have a destination site. Aside from the distribution sites, like we are Hulu partners and YouTube partners, and but we have a site where you go and you can see backstage, you can see, you can watch all the seasons. Frequently, our fans do that over and over, and new fans say, "I just found this show, Anyone But Me, and I'm up all night. I'm watching every single show." And I think, obviously, you have right there on your site your link to Facebook and your link to Twitter and any other links you want, and your reviews, and so that it's contained there. If people see the show on Hulu or YouTube or Blip, but they want to know more. So for me, that's like the first step of grounding and anchoring, I think, a show and fans.
I'd like to build off that. It's so critically important to have those sharing tools. Obviously we didn't have sharing tools, let's say 5-6 years ago. We just had Facebook. But now if you don't have those sharing tools to encourage others to share what they find to be incredibly entertaining or helpful or whatever, then you are really missing the boat in terms of building your audience, and you're missing the boat in terms of really leveraging earned media like we never had the ability to do before. So I think that's first and foremost. Instead of thinking about an internet site, the first thing folks need to think about is really social first before anything else.
Well, the thing, to build on that, the other thing that you need to do is ask people. I mean, a lot of people say, they'll put it out, they'll have the social media stuff, but they don't ever ask their audience to do anything. And if you ask, interestingly enough, people, if they like your stuff, they'll do it. So whether it's subscribe or share or whatever, just actually ask.
we do that. We really do that. And we have a person who runs a fan site and puts out a newsletter and has actually helped us get emails out sometimes because unfortunately our webmaster passed away, and we were kind of left with how do we do this? And if fans are engaged and they feel that they are part of things, it's just what Jim said. It's you're.
Well, one of the things that Jim has done over the years is brought his audience to come see the show in real life. And so with the show Dig Nation, Kevin Rose and Alec Albrecht every year at South by Southwest would have this big event where 5,000 people would come and watch them do the show at Stubbs Barbecue. And it was a great opportunity for the fans to come and connect. And I think a lot of times when we're making stuff that's online, people forget that there's also this real world thing that you can leverage as well.
Yeah, don't be afraid of your audience. I see too many people who put themselves out there and are shy or whatever, and they don't even want to interact with their audience at all. You know what? Audiences are scary. They're real. They're flesh and blood. But they're your audience. You gotta love them. And getting out and meeting them is really a great way to energize them.
Absolutely. And if engaging with the audience is something that's maybe not your strong suit, there's other options. Like you could hire somebody to help you run that part of your show, or find one of the actors that does love doing this and let them do that work for you. And then once you start identifying what I like to call super fans, once you start engaging them, they're going to start taking some of that weight off of your shoulders, and they're going to do that job for you.
You have a problem with just going out and getting a hired gun who doesn't really know what's going on and having them go out and try and be the voice of your community. It's like having somebody try and write a celebrity's tweets. Let's face it just doesn't work. You know when Paris Hilton is tweeting and when she isn't. So if it is somebody that you bring on to do it, I think it's important that they be invested in it from day one. Maybe a super fan.
Right.
Who is already out there and a fan. You're like, you know what? I'm going to pay you some money to come in and run this for me.
Yeah, Rooster Teeth did that to great success, where they found someone who basically created a fan forum for them, and they did such a wonderful job of it that Rooster Teeth actually said, let us bring you on and be part of like the Rooster Teeth family. And it worked really, really well. Thank you for correcting me, because that's really more what I meant, as opposed to just, you're right, just hiring someone out of the blue that doesn't understand your content is actually going to be more damaging than helpful.
People can spell phony a mile away, especially on the internet. On the internet, everyone knows that you're a dog.
Also, it means so much to fans. I mean, you begin to forget, or you shouldn't, but because I generally try to answer on Twitter and Facebook. Takes my entire life to do these things, but I mean, there's no other part when you're producing and writing and working on a show. But this person then retweeted, "Oh my God, Susan Miller tweeted me," and how awesome. And I'm thinking, wow, if we have that kind of effect, and we do that with we're lucky to have actors who are young enough not to complain, and we're like thrilled that people love them and got passionate about them. And so we always ask them first, but have them also interact with audiences.
I have a different take on it. Did you want to go?
Yeah, after you.
Okay, so I spent most of my career working with brands and brands sponsoring and branded entertainment and product placement, et cetera, from that perspective. And when you're working with a brand, you do not have the personality. You don't have real people that can tell that authentic story. So one of the things that we grappled with was who should be telling our story, who should be carrying the brand, the personality, et cetera. And it was interesting because I won't name the brand, but at this particular company, we were, of course, the creative agency wants to take that job on because they are the brand, right? They own the brand. They understand the brand inside and out. And then, of course, what's happened lately is public relations folks, because they can react so quickly and they're so well trained in crisis management, that there was an opportunity for them to step up and say, okay, creative person, you need to write scripts and get them, back and edited and back and forth. That's not your world. Our world is to react quickly as the public relations arm of the marketing team. So we ended up testing both scenarios, and it was funny because you can find people at a public relations firm that understand, that know everything. So they're not off the street. They've been working with the brand for, a couple of years. But what we found was they really they just didn't have the voice. They did not have the brand personality to sustain an ongoing dialogue over time. They could do it in the beginning, but then they kind of ran out of steam. But at the same time, we had the creative agencies and their copywriters working on another brand, and we found that that was really the best way to go. In fact, so much so that one of the brands actually hired copywriters and brought them in-house, which is kind of unusual, in order for them to actually be the voice of the brand when it ever had to do with commenting, social, anything related to social in the brand. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of spin that, but I think it depends on the brand, and it's a lot of trial and error to figure out what's the best way to go.
So I think I can give you a tangible example of just that. We had a show a number of years ago that suddenly the trolls found, and it was just negative comment after negative comment. And so we took a really concerted approach toward a campy, smoochy response to all of the negative comments. And over the course of about 6 months, we developed kind of a commenting personality. And the fans who were not commenting but who liked the show started then coming to the defense of the show. And we could then step out of that role and let the fans take over. Mm-hmm. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about kind of knowing the voice of your audience and what's going to delight them.
Yep. Great. So since we did start to bring up brands, let's talk about that a little bit more in terms of... Okay, if you could hold questions for the end, okay, thanks. Just in terms of when you get to a point with your content where you're being courted by brands and advertisers wanting to integrate into your content, and how to kind of marry those in a way that feels authentic without turning away some of your audience. Do anybody have thoughts on that?
The thing that we've done a lot of brand integration. A lot of what we do is we take these communities that we build around hosts and topics, and we introduce brands into those communities through the host. But it doesn't work if the host doesn't believe in it. So anytime we go out and bring out a brand, the host always has the ability to say, wait, I don't like this. I mean, a perfect example, we have a show, I think it was, Geek Beat. And so Callie Lewis, Geek Beat, very outspoken, wonderful, amazing personality. And I think it could be wrong, but when GoDaddy was a big sponsor of ours, and when the CEO of GoDaddy shot an elephant, she was like, I am not putting that on my show. We're like, okay, it's fine. We've had other people who have not been interested. We've had Air Force as a sponsor, and there are some of our hosts that are not interested in promoting Air Force. And that is fine, because if you don't have, again, like the voice that you brought up, Carol, that voice, if your host or you or the person doing the show can't talk about that brand from the heart as something that they believe in, then it's just not going to work.
Yeah, having that brand permission is really important. I think there's a piece that Demand Media did a while back for a camera made by, I think it was Kodak, and they had Bigfoot was like hiding behind these guys as they're doing the showing how to use this camera and how to shoot video with it. It was really cute, and a lot of people saw this. It was done in a fun way that you had brand permission to play with it. I've heard other stories where, like in Brazil, the best-selling car back in the 90s was a Ford Explorer that was wrapped with MTV logos everywhere. It was the MTV branded Ford Explorer. Now, I don't think we have brand permission here in the States to do that type of thing, and so really consider that and what your audience can palate.
We've had LL Bean Subarus.
Those are good. Tasty.
Jim, you showed this morning in your keynote, you showed an example of the Film Riot Netflix commercial, which was absolutely delightful, and it was as entertaining, I think, as just watching a show.
Yeah, and that's where it really, if you get the hosts that are really into it, then they can create something that really speaks both from the host brand perspective and the brand perspective. That's a total win.
Right. So again, scripted media is somewhat different, and we although Bestsellers, the other show I did, was branded, but it was a company that was a hiring company, and so it wasn't about product placement, and it wasn't about anyone going out specifically to talk about that company. But what it was, as Bestsellers, was about, I came up with the idea of multi-generational women in a book club, because what this company wanted represented was different kinds of women working, different careers, different occupations, and so on. And the only way that I could come up with a way to do that really was to put them in a situation together that wasn't the workforce per se. But because I dealt with these personalities and they're women trying to struggle with career and life and children, that spoke to them. So in that sense, we really fulfilled. They were very, very happy with the show. At the same time that people watching weren't specifically aware that we were necessarily selling something. They're watching, these characters and their conflicts and their, and they're dealing with these things. So it's just a different kind of branding. But I did, real quickly, try to reach out to sponsors for Anyone But Me. We tried for years, really, but I wrote these letters, and one of the selling points, a couple of things. One is that we said, well, the actors, we can do little mini dramas, featuring your product. We can offshoots of your product. And then I also said, and our fans are so passionate that if you helped us go through another season or continue our show, they would consider you heroes. And they are very vocal, and they will spend, basically saying, and they will reward you by buying what you put out there. It didn't happen for me, but I thought those were some good ideas.
No, but what you just described is what NASCAR is built on, right? So without the sponsors and without the fans that are incredibly loyal, they do research every year about how loyal fans are of brands that are contributing to NASCAR. So for that industry, there wouldn't even be an industry, I don't think, if it wasn't for product placement. And then the other thing I think now, if you go back 20, 30 years, product placement was what it was called, right? That seemed very, it kind of stood out and it was kind of jarring when you saw a brand in anything, in a film, in a TV show. But nowadays, it almost seems strange when you see someone hold a can and it says cola on it, right? Something generic. To me, that's what's jarring. So we have now gotten to a point that we have permission to use brands, and almost in a way, if we don't use the brands, it doesn't seem authentic. So I think we're in a really good place from branded entertainment perspective.
I think, something else has changed in the last, maybe even less than 20 years, in the last 10 years, it seems like, as musicians and other people kind of crossed over in their music, as they were looking for alternate revenue streams, finding, a brand partnership was a key part of their revenue stream. That has become much more, I think people are very comfortable with brands in their entertainment. I don't think we need to be afraid of going after brands and saying, look, we can bring you an audience, we know who they are, and this is how this is going to delight them in some way.
Awesome. Any final thoughts before I open it up to questions from the audience?
Just one other thing, which is that, on Hulu and Blip and, YouTube as well, we have the pre-rolls, we have the ads, and we have not heard a single complaint from, any of our fans, and so that also, I think, speaks to what you're saying, too, Carol. Mm-hmm.
I think on the brand side, there's an opportunity for show creators, too, to leverage the distribution that brands have. I haven't seen this happen yet, but I do think that there's an opportunity, and this isn't the best example, but if you had a web series that somehow was being sponsored by a cereal company and having your web series on the back of the cereal box with some type of promotion, that type of almost backwards product integration of your show on their product in the physical distribution world will help you grow your audience as well. And I think we're going to see some of that this year.
I think you see things like Lego does this on their website, and my children frequently go to the Lego website to watch the Lego web series that a friend of mine works on, and then they figure out what they're going to buy based on what's in the web series.
Well, I just want to clarify something you said. You talked about longer premium scripted, and I just want to make sure people realize that you can do longer and premium and not have it be scripted as well. They're not all sort of mutually exclusive. We've been doing long-form premium stuff, and we started that way 6 or 7 years ago. So it's all about, to me, there's a bit of an argument about what's premium and what's not. From my perspective, premium is what a large group of people want to watch and form community around. And you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be 5 cameras and a jib and a director of photography and a bunch of PAs running around. If somebody wants to watch it and you build a big community around it, to me, that's premium.
Awesome. Agreed. Did you still have your question? I thought from a long time ago. So.
It is still, I think it's still relevant. When you were talking about going from the creatives to the PR people, and you said that the PR people didn't seem to have the voice, I'd be interested in how you quantified that. Was that something, was it an internal observational thing, or was it something that you had gotten some feedback on from maybe social media? How did you determine that?
It was basic. It was subjective. So it was based on, and it did not come from the creative agency. So they had an obvious bias. But internally, we had assessed that the voice had become stale. It just didn't have the, and we did see it in the numbers. So there were less people responding and commenting to our postings. And so that was really what started to have us take a look at why are folks responding less. And then we determined subjectively that it may be because the voice was just not there anymore.
Okay, the question I'd ask in response to it, do you think, and this will be the only other question I'll ask.
You can ask as many as you'd like.
Okay. Do you think it's because maybe PR folks are a little bit more protective of the brand?
Absolutely.
It's kind of status, whereas the creative people want to push the envelope and try new things?
Absolutely. Absolutely, because PR folks are very disciplined, right? They're always thinking about risk, reducing risk. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly what it is. And they're just not as playful. That's what we were looking for, because the brand was very playful.
So a lot of the really passionate, personality-driven shows are talking head format. And that works very well on YouTube. But there is like a pushback from other media companies that look for licensed content, and I would say a lot of brands against talking head format. How do you balance that? So a format that clearly works on YouTube versus something that generally isn't welcomed by other players in the ecosystem.
I'm not exactly sure who the question is addressed to in terms of how do you balance that, but I will say this. That Anyone But Me was chosen as a YouTube on the rise partner recently. And we were sort of in competition with 4 other shows. They feature you for a month and kind of do this outreach and PR. It's great. I mean, you're just chosen your channel, and we were the only, I think, the only non-talking head show on there actually, and the only scripted. Character-driven drama on there, and we won it. We got it. Now, I don't know what that says, other than the fact that our fans are everywhere and they will vote. But it's interesting because we certainly are in the minority, and we are struggling to have our place at the table. I will say, in the space. So.
I think what you have to look at is results, and we do a lot of pre and post studies when we bring brands in, and we build these communities around the host and the topics. And if we show real results to an advertiser or to somebody that there is engagement, people come in, they watch, they buy, it's like the NASCAR example. I think that's how you get over that. It is in many ways a new medium, and we're still kind of creating what it is, but. The idea that we're going to go back to tried and true formulas that worked on television is not necessarily the right answer either.
Hi, I'm Brian Smiga from Tremor Video. We're leaders in engagement advertising video advertising. So what role does advertising play, and how important in audience development is relevant, engaging, on-target, interactive, entertaining, funny advertising to audience building?
Well, I think advertising, first of all, is very important to building companies because they end up building and allowing you to keep on doing what you're doing. I think when it's targeted correctly, like what you guys do and what other people do, and I know Demand Media is really good at this as well and the stuff that they work on, when that happens, it's a great package. When it doesn't work, it's terrible. I mean, we always joke about the fact that it's like, our content's for men and young men, typically without families. And when that diaper ad shows up, we're like, somebody screwed up.
Yeah.
Ain't no diapers being sold on this show.
And Hulu does ask, is this ad relevant to you? And that's a different situation, but because you're not sponsored by one, you're sharing. But in some ways, I wish I were in the audience right now, because this is my question after our series finale and such, winning so many awards and getting fabulous press in all major papers and online journals. And I say, we did all the work. Okay, we picked up, we targeted a market. We have loyal, passionate viewers. Blip always said we had the most views and most engaged views. So I'm going to turn this around or ask people up here, what is the answer to a show like that in terms of getting that sponsorship?
Too many choices. Too many choices.
What do you mean? On whose? For whom?
For the advertiser. So there's a couple things happening, because I was on that other side for a long time, and it could take, it boils down to resources and choices. So there's so many choices we have to go out and grab, consumers. Right. So that's one. So, and the obvious one, it's getting even an increasingly fragmented world. But second, the dollars involved, right? So when advertisers look at funding a scripted program, they're essentially looking at helping to produce this program, which they then say in the C-suite certainly, are we in the business of producing shows? And they quickly say, no, we're not in that business. So it's still early because this is probably the year of content. More and more brands are jumping in, but they're not necessarily all jumping in to do consumer-oriented entertainment. A lot of them are starting to now increase the type of quality video on their own sites. So the dollars that were there, let's say 3 years ago for branded entertainment, they pulled back the last 2, right? Now they're coming back into the market, and where they're spending the money that we're seeing is on their own sites. Everything is cyclical. So then the next round,
well, that's the thing. Sometimes it's really exciting to be ahead of your time and to be a pioneer. It's thrilling, exciting, and a wonderful creative challenge. And at the same time, it's like, okay, years later, you're looking back and you go, wait a minute. And that's part of the deal. It's part of the deal. You're just breaking ground.
Yes.
I can say, having just come through the digital upfronts, that there were numerous brands that wanted to know if they could own the show and be the publisher. And they essentially wanted to be the person who was the show.
And I think that if you're looking for one brand to sponsor a show, that's too great an investment, right? So I think there may be an increasing trend for multiple brands to sponsor a show. I did that at Mars a couple of years ago, where we went out and it was unscripted, it was 6 weeks long, but because we were not the only sponsor, it was a lot more palatable to our finance folks.
Makes sense.
My question is more of a business question. I come from the business side. I manage video production for about 80 websites. I've got crews and teams all over the world, and so I do more B2B, B2C. I don't do a lot of C2C. I don't do a lot of entertainment. I do come from the entertainment world. I used to work for TV Guide Networks, so I know that industry fairly well. But where is P&G? They spent $3 billion last year on advertising, right? Where was that in the digital world? I didn't go to upfronts. I'll be at NCTA next week in Boston. But where are these major players that spend a lot of money. Of course, then again, it scares me when GM announced yesterday they're pulling $30 million from their ad buy from Facebook. Done. See you, Zuckerberg. Good luck on your IPO on Friday. To me that concerns me because I am an online video web evangelist, and I tell everybody if I get in front of a CEO, I'm touting the web. I am saying this is the new frontier. This is where you've got to be. This is where you've got to spend your money. And we're always looking for sponsors. We are like the pitch maniacs of go digital or die. Because literally, I come from a 100-year-old family-owned print magazine company, but that's what we're saying. We're saying we take all our print, all this great information, we know how to create great content. We're going to take it to the digital world. So where are the sponsors? Where are they? And I pose that question because I'm still looking. We're always looking. Sometimes we find them, but then other times we just get blank stares like digital.
Again, Procter's one of those companies that are launching their own sites, right? They're just taking it inside. They may not launch a site that has Procter & Gamble in the name, but they certainly are. It's Procter & Gamble all over.
Give me $1 million for a new show. They're like, no way. I've got my own. I'm going to create my own UCG. And I'll create my own channel. Why would I give you $50,000 for this?
Well, kind of looking at full circle, you look at what the Lonely Girl guys are doing now, and they're doing work for Kraft. So the Real Women of Philadelphia cream cheese, the Lonely Girl guys are doing that. Paula Deen, they're doing stuff with her. So they're working with brands and they're working with celebrities, and they're bringing those groups together. So a lot of it is really figuring out what value you're going to bring. As an independent web creator, I found a lot of success going after sponsors that were startups, and they didn't have an ad agency in the way that wanted to do the creative. They had VC money to spend, and they wanted to accomplish a specific thing with a web video that would get millions of views. And the other thing don't forget about is podcasting. Video podcasting, audio podcasting, a great way to get your voice out there as well.
I have time for one more, so let's go back there.
Yes, if you had to sum up in just a few points on finding and growing an audience, not a sponsor, what would you say is your 3-point play?
I'm glad you brought it back to that.
What is each of your 3-point play for audience building?
So I'll start. Remember that when you create a piece of content, and the minute that you hit publish and it goes out on the internet or wherever you're publishing, your day has just begun, not just ended. If you're not out there spending equally as much time with your community, talking to them, integrating them, building that up that you did, polishing that beautiful piece of content, you're not going to grow and create an audience.
So I don't know if I also can put this in 3 points.
I
know, but it was a beautifully articulated one in a big sentence.
You get one.
Well, actually, this follows Jim's, I think, nicely, which first of all, to be in it for the long haul. Because if you are in it to just get into some other kind of media, I think that's a big mistake. You are in it, you devote yourself to it, you put your best efforts into it, just as you would in any other endeavor, artistic or business endeavor, and you use all the available tools that there are in social media, and as I said before, having a destination site, and you reach out. I used to just go on the web and see other sites, other blogs, other journals, to see who might be interested in our show. And I think that's what you have to do. You wear all the hats.
If you think about your favorite show, your favorite movie, your favorite book, there's something about that story that moves you in multiple ways. There's different emotions that are being moved by that piece of entertainment. And so when you're making this stuff, think about it ahead of time. What are the different emotions that you're going to move? And if you can move 2 or more emotions in the content that you're creating, it will resonate with your audience, and they will share it, and you will build a following.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it simple. I think it's really about if you want to build an audience, of course, it's about reach, getting that trial. So to me, it's about search, it's about social, and it's about really taking that audience and recognizing that they are the reason you are doing what you're doing. They are the reason you either have a show or you don't have a show. And so it's nurturing that audience as well. As you had said earlier, I think it was Jim that said we really need to engage with that audience. And you'll find it does pay out. We're finding, for example, by doing that exact type of thing, we're seeing repeats per user go up this year, I think 36% over last year. So it's a formula that it tends to, reinforce itself over time. Search, social, nurture, repeat.
So I would echo all that, but I would also say know who your audience is in your content. Help create an appetite for them, and then satiate the appetite.
Can I have a bonus round?
A bonus
No, go
round?
ahead.
Well, I was going to say to close out, I think the one thing we would keep in mind is that not only are you engaging with your audience, which is a community, also look at your community. You're not the only person making content out there. There's probably some people out there that are making similar content to your own, so try to find ways to collaborate. If you see a show out there that you love, tell them, and then they may return the favor later down the road.
IWTV.
IWTV.
Yeah, so just one last thing is consistency. If you're going to do something, say, do it every Tuesday, release it every Tuesday at the same time, every day. Set a schedule and don't miss it, because people will rely on that consistency, and when you're not there, they'll forget about you.
I'll just add to that, because if you can.
More bonus rounds. Go for it.
I'm sorry, but seriously, that you're not, like we were not, certainly in our first year, we didn't have the money to do it that way, but we did eventually pick the date of that we would
do it, and we called it ABM Tuesday. And if we couldn't release an episode on that day, we released something.
Something, exactly.
And we still
Awesome.
do.
So you got about 6 points there.
There.
That makes me ask, what about secondary apps? As a way of gaining audience too, is that another possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. It's adding to that whole use the tools that are available to you. Like, we go back to the very beginning. I mean, Lonely Girl 15, it wasn't just about they put videos up on YouTube. Every character had a Twitter page. Every character had a Facebook profile. They tried out all kinds of secondary apps that they integrated into the show. I think they were one of the first to integrate Skype into their show. Use all the tools that are available to you.
That makes sense. The one that they need to make sense.
That makes sense,
Yeah.
yes. And if you find your audience isn't gravitating towards one, don't use that one and go to where they feel comfortable. I would say would be my concluding thoughts on that. So thank you all for a great session. We really appreciate it. Come on up and say hi.